Welcome to Permission to Be Human, the podcast. I'm your host, Mel Finlater, mother, coach, and curator of Permission to Be Human, the company and community. If you're a mom, know a mom, or want to be a mom, and you crave getting out in the world to make a difference, then you're in the right place. This is a space for moms like you to connect with yourself, your purpose, and your big, audacious dreams. Because when you feel your best, you can better you, your family, and the wider world. Let's do this. Today we're chatting with Shilpa Alimchandani, and it is such a beautiful conversation, really digging into things like traveling without our kids and liberation and how coaching can enter the scene in a more collective way. So I'm going to read you what Shilpa describes herself as. She says she's a collective liberation coach who partners with women of color to lead with clarity and purpose without sacrificing their values and well-being. She's also a mother, partner, daughter, sister, and friend. Her dream is to engage in meaningful work that fills her heart and pays the bills, and to travel the world to experience different cultures and natural wonders. All right. Hi, Shilpa.
Hey, Mel.
I am so excited to have you here. The work you're doing sounds so incredibly valuable to the world, and I want to hear more about it. And I'm sure that the people listening do as well. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about who's Shilpa.
So I usually start by describing a lot of my social identities because that's a bit, grounding and contextualizing. So I am a cisgender, heterosexual woman, South Asian, Hindu, mother, partner, daughter, sister, friend, coach, entrepreneur. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, in the US, on the unceded territory of the Piscataway people. And yeah, I really, really care about, the work you do, Mel, and, working with women and including mothers who are poised to do great things, but there's a lot of noise getting in the way.
That's such a beautiful way of saying that. I think so many of us can identify with that, and it really connects in with that work that I'm trying to do too, because that belief that we are like poised to do great things, right? Like and are doing great things every day. We don't notice it, but we are.
Yeah. And it's like, it's balancing the doing and the being, right? So we want to do great things, but how is that possible? It's about how we want to be. And I think that is really core to our learning and our growth. It's like we're not defined by our accomplishments, right? But about who we are and how we live and what our values are. So that's important to me personally, and it's also important in the work that I do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. The difference between that do and be, right? Because it's so easy in, we're always this podcast is women who have big audacious dreams, right? And so often that can be taken as let's do more. And it's like it's not really about doing more, right? It's about making choices along the way, but it's about being who you are. And those dreams are who you are, right?
Yeah. And I think
do so much.
we can do so much. And for me, we have to be aware of some of the context in which we're operating, in which we're living, and some of the limiting beliefs that we have learned over the years, how we've been socialized. I work a lot with women of color in particular. So you think about like intersecting experiences of marginalization And so we just take in and believe from a young age a lot of things that hold us back, right? Well, that's not
Yeah.
possible. That's not for you. And I think one of the big challenges is unlearning those messages.
Right.
I think it's kind of easier to learn something new, right? Like, oh, I want to learn how to cook this, or I want to learn how to do this skill, or learn this language, or whatever. And you know the steps, and you can get the guidance to do it. But the things that we've already learned and are deeply ingrained in, how we see the world and how we see ourselves, like looking at that, questioning that, unlearning that, that's a whole nother set of challenges, right? I think,
Yeah.
whew, like it's a process. I'm still in it. I'm not claiming to be on the other side of anything, but
Yeah.
just being on that journey of unlearning can open up so many possibilities that you wouldn't have considered before.
Agreed. Yeah. A couple things come to mind when you say that. One is that it's easy to assume that people with big audacious dreams, which is the phrase that I use, right? It means that it's outside the norm, that it's like it's a little bit crazy, like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me? That's what you actually want to do, right? And so, you know, I as someone who talks a lot about that and other people out there doing it can seem as if we've got all that other stuff sorted out, right? Because to some
Sure.
extent we've had to get to a certain level of believing in our dream, right? And believing that it's okay that it's a little different, it's okay that that's out there. So we've had to unlearn some of those things.
Mhm.
And yet, as a woman and as a mom, those are still in there. Those stories are still in there. And I think that unlearning
Absolutely.
process is a lifelong one, right?
Mhm.
So if someone said something in particular, like about the work I was doing or whatever, in fact, I was just before we started recording, I was telling you that it took a while for me to come around to the idea that moms are the people that I like, mothering and mothers are the people that I really want to work with. And that's because there was a story in my mind that if I got challenged on it, I don't even know how to explain what the story is, but if I got challenged on the fact that like you can't tell people to do more or you can't like it was something around if you want to do something else, then you're not liking being a mom. There's this story,
Oh,
right?
like there's some kind of choice that you're making there.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
why can't you just be okay with this is good enough?
Yeah.
That story that comes along, right? And that like
Yeah.
you're a bad mom if you want more. And I had to unlearn enough. As soon as I realized that, I just bawled, right? You had to get it out. I had to unlearn it. And then I was
Yeah.
like, no, now I'm confident that if I got challenged on this, because in the world of online, you're going to be, right?
Sure.
I'm confident with like, no, this is the answer. Like, this is my belief. This is why. This is, and I think that's just an example of we have these stories and beliefs that are ingrained in us. No
Oh, yeah.
matter how much my values say actually the opposite, the story's still there.
The story is there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was thinking about, you know, I, like you, a coach, and I've been on my own for about almost 5 years now. But there were years of my working inside of organizations that I had a very hard time entertaining the idea that I could be an entrepreneur, that I could start my own practice, because there was a lot of fear there. So, speaking about the narratives or the stories that we internalize, I am the firstborn daughter of immigrant parents, who went through their own challenges moving to the US. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, in the middle of the United States, in a really white neighborhood, a little brown family, right? And there was very much a scarcity mindset, right? That there's not enough. We have to work super, super hard for everything that we have. A mentality around, put your head down, work hard, don't draw attention to yourself. And that's how you will be able to survive, right?
Yeah.
In this society. And so, and and this is not at all like a judgment or a criticism of, how I grew up or what I was taught. It was just the reality, right? For my
Yeah.
parents, their generation, the community that I was a part of. How, fast forward, how does that influence me and my decision making and my own narrative was that, job security and, again, put your head down, work hard, don't draw attention to yourself. So for most of my career, for like, 20 years, that's what I did, right?
Yeah.
I've worked in different sectors, but I was always, an employee and, working for somebody else. And the idea of abandoning all of that security to do something that I wanted to do was really, really scary
Yeah.
because I had that playing in my head, all the reasons that's not wise, that's not smart, that's not,
Yeah.
you know, good for your future, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. There's that phrase, don't shit all over yourself, right? And and it's so true because we do. We do. And it's important to, once you notice those shoulds, those stories, those narratives, then have compassion for yourself for that,
Yeah.
right? Because it's so easy to then be like, oh my goodness, like just get over it, or just beat yourself up.
Let it go.
Exactly, as if it was that easy. Unlearning things that have been ingrained in our brains since infancy is
Yeah.
not an easy task. It is a lot
Mhm.
of work.
It's
Yeah.
work. I would offer that it's worthwhile work,
Yeah. Yeah.
that what we can learn from that process and who we can become if we're willing to do that work is pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Okay, so let's hear a little bit more about you and what's your story of how you got to where you are? And you can combine that or separate that with like what's the dream for you? What are you working towards?
Mhm. There's so many aspects to this story. I am
Yeah.
a mom, so to ground in that, I have a 12-year-old son and a 9-year-old daughter, and my partner and I are very much co-parents in that relationship. That's really important to me. My I mentioned that I'm the firstborn daughter in my family. My parents actually moved about 5 years ago to live closer to us. So they left St. Louis, where I grew up, and they live about 10, 15 minutes from us now in Maryland. And I have a sister in New York and a brother in California. And so a big part of my story is my family, also my extended family, my in-laws. I still have family in India and have gone back to visit them. So that sense of family and also broader community is core to my story, right?
Mm.
What I do now, I call collective liberation coaching. You know, most people have some idea what coaching's about, right? Individual growth and development. And part of what I found a little limiting about mainstream coaching as I had been exposed to it through some programs was like really, really focused on the individual.
Mm.
And for me, this journey that we're on in life is not just about who we are as individuals, right? And it is about all these influences. So when you ask me about my story, some of the first things that come up for me are my relationships with
Mhm.
people and my community, because that's part of what makes me who I am. And I also think that as we are looking to, unlearn the limiting beliefs and really pursue those big dreams, we do that in community too. We don't do that on our own,
Yeah.
right? Our liberation is very much connected. And so that's how I look at what I do now in terms of collective liberation coaching. And, I mentioned that I worked inside of organizations for a number of years. even as I became a parent and doing the juggling act between work and home. And it took me a long time to get to the point where I was ready to take the risk. I felt like I had some of the supports in place that made me more confident to abandon the security of a full-time job and do something on my own. And honestly, like, it's kind of a tough economic moment in a lot of places. And I look at people with full-time jobs and I'm like, I don't know that that's secure, right? So even my
Mhm.
idea of what security means, I'm questioning now, right? Like, is
Mm.
that necessarily more secure than what I'm doing right now as an independent, contractor or consultant and coach? Um, so yeah, like a lot of lessons learned. And I think for me, in part, I'm living some of that dream now by letting go of the need to be full-time employed and like exploring what I can do on
Mm.
my own. One of the first things I did 5 years ago when I quit my job and decided to do my own thing was to join a coaching program. I registered for the 9-month certification program as we do, and that really shifted things in significant ways for me. Both what I learned through the program, the community I built. We had our own kind of people of color affinity group within my coaching cohort. And that group, like, we are still close. We still talk on a monthly basis. We have annual reunions in person, right? And so, again, the community piece was so huge. And coaching allowed me to actually pursue some of those dreams, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's just beautiful. I think as someone who's a big believer in community and the value of, so Chris Peterson in the positive psychology world, one of the founders says other people matter. And that's his
Mm,
definition of positive
mm,
psychology. Right. And like everything you just said there is that it matters who we surround ourselves with, how we engage with the people around us, the stories that we're picking up and along the way, and just everything. Other people matter. We're designed to be together, right?
yeah,
And I'm so intrigued by this concept of collective liberation coaching because of that, right? Like, how do we take coaching, which is often individual, though I also run group coaching, but
yeah.
it is done in an individual kind of way and think more collectively. Like, that's a
Mm,
fascinating concept to me.
mhm, mhm.
And I
Yeah,
love that. Sorry, you go ahead.
no, what I was thinking about that in terms of the collective aspect, it's recognizing how our social identities shape who we are, how we move through the world, how others perceive us as well,
Mhm.
and also our relationships with power, right, in society.
Yeah.
So having an appreciation and understanding of some of those power dynamics and social identity and cultural differences that shape our worldview and our choices is really, really important. And that was the part that was challenging for me when I about maybe 9 or 10 years ago, the first time I tried to do a coaching program, you know, it's a really popular program, and I remember sitting in the weekend long first module of the course and realizing, I was the only person who was like, well, what about culture? And well, what about power? And how would identity, play into this? I was like, oh yeah, this is not the right place for me, and then
Mhm.
fast forward when I quit my job and I found something else
Yeah.
that really looked at issues of culture and power and oppression and all of that as part of our experience as humans, and that needs to play into coaching as well. That resonated on a deeper level with me, and it's very much what I bring into the collective liberation coaching too. Is like, yes, we're people, but we're people within social contexts,
Yeah.
and we need to understand all of that.
Hmm. Yeah. It's almost like a sociology kind of approach to
Yeah.
it all as well,
Yeah,
right?
in some ways it's like, blending sociology and psychology. I think that's true.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really interesting. So, little tidbit about me, when I was in high school, I wanted to go to university to study psychology. And mostly because I didn't know any other way of studying people. Like that's just the only one that was like,
Right.
I've heard this, okay. And then when I got there, I did general studies, but I took a few in the first year, I should say, and I took a few psychology courses before deciding, and I was like, this is horrible. Because one, it was like at that early stage, it's very multiple choice test and memorizing and like
Yeah.
seeing, that kind of stuff. And that didn't really work for me. But I think it was also that it was very individual. I was like, yeah, but it's not so much about the brain that I'm thinking about. It's not like it's more than that.
Yeah.
It is that. And that's where positive psychology then came in later in my life, right? And I love to like understand the basics of like neural pathways and how that works and how we can grow them into
Hmm.
what we want. And it's about the sociology part of it. It's about the collective, the community, we are who we are because of who are around, right? And
Yeah.
found it at in different points in our life, different stages of development. Yeah.
And I would say that goes even deeper than this this lifetime and this space that we're occupying now. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll share with you. I just recently returned from a trip to Peru. I was there for a yoga retreat, something I never thought I would do, like leave my partner and my kids and my business and go abroad and and really be in another world, another space. And one of the things I engaged in, which I was very nervous about, was a sweat lodge.
Mm.
And it's this tent with a pit in the middle where hot stones are brought into the center, and it becomes and it's dark. It's very womb-like. This is kind of a North American indigenous tradition more so than it is a South American one, even though I was in South America when I
Hmm.
participated in this. And there's a lot of ritual around it. There's music, and it was an intense 2-hour experience. I was really, really scared about that.
Is it with other
Um,
people, like your
it
collective?
was with other people. There
Mhm.
were probably 8 or 10 of us in the tent, and we're just like basically in bathing suits and sweating. Like, yeah, I just didn't know how much sweat could come out of my body until that
Yeah.
experience. And the reason I mentioned that this goes beyond the lives that we're living now, when we think about it's more than the individual, is that space really, for not just me, but also other people in the space with me, brought up a lot of generational issues and generational trauma that
Mm.
like came to the fore in that dark and vulnerable space, which was somewhat overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, we have access not just to our lived experiences in this lifetime, but to all the generations before us and what we're continuing to carry in our own bodies
Yeah.
from all of those generations. And it was a pretty profound moment to be in touch with that, to witness other people's experiences, and also to like access my own and be like, oh wow, I'm really thinking about my grandmothers and great grandmothers and like all the generations that came before me in this moment, and how fortunate I am to be where I am right now, to have the freedom that I have right now, and also the need to forgive as well. Like I was thinking about generations past,
Mm.
and particularly what came up for me were men who had, harmed women. And, we live in a patriarchal society and
Yeah.
that's everywhere. But I like got to this place where I was like, I need to forgive. Like I really like I'm holding on to this, coming back to it
Yeah.
clearly in this moment. Well, I need to forgive some of that
Yeah.
because it's I'm still embodying it, and and it feels really heavy. And so there was a release in that,
Yeah.
and being able to see that, to feel it in my body, and to release it.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you feel that release throughout that process?
I did.
Yeah.
I felt somewhat lighter afterwards.
Hmm.
Just like, okay, not that, there's some magic solution to generational trauma, but to engage with those feelings and those experiences in community again. Like I was with other people that I knew and I trusted, I think helped open things up for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And it's the kind of intergenerational thing has come up in my mind recently as well as I learned about epigenetics. I don't know if you've heard the
Mm,
word, but I was
mm-hmm.
like, what? Like, there's a science behind this. Like, our genes, epigenetics is basically the intergenerational component of it. Like,
It
there's a
is
science of,
on the
okay, our genes
cellular
are created for,
level. Yeah.
exactly. Like, go look it
Yes.
up. I won't do it justice to try to describe, honestly, because I was so like amazed and in awe of the fact that
Yeah.
this isn't something we I'm going to say simply, but it's not the right word, but simply do through rituals and such like that. This is that, and it is it is science. It is the like our bodies at a cellular level, as you say, are deciding which genes to turn on and off based on our great 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 grandma and what happened or didn't happen, right? And that is just like mind blown for me, right?
Yeah. In some ways, I feel like Western science and medicine is catching up to what, indigenous teachings
Yeah,
all around the world have known for as long as, most can remember.
yeah,
That yes, these things are passed down from one generation to
yeah,
another, and that we need to acknowledge our place within this broader system,
yeah,
and that there are techniques outside of, coaching or talk therapy or whatever, that can
yeah,
help us to heal, right? Like there's just so
yeah,
many different healing techniques that are available to us. And now there is some science, Western science, right, to back that up.
yeah,
But the truth has been this all along.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. But all of our stories have ingrained in our mind that we need the Western science to back it up to believe it, right?
Mhm. And hey,
Or the
I'm a geek,
experience to
I
believe it.
love that stuff. Like, I think it's
Yeah,
super interesting to learn about neuroscience and
yeah,
epigenetics, as you said. And like, the curious part of me loves that opportunity to dig deeper and understand
yeah,
it, and also acknowledge that it's
yeah,
one way of
yeah,
understanding our experience as humans,
yeah,
and it's not the only valid way.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's amazing. And so I want to also tap into the fact that you went away for 10 days.
I
You
did.
have a 9 and 12-year-old, I believe you said, right?
Yes,
And a
that's
business to
true.
run. And you're like, I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna do this for me. Like, tell me about that journey.
Well, Mel, I had a list a mile long of all the reasons why I couldn't do this yoga retreat that I was telling you about in another
Mm-hmm.
country. It was a very, very dear friend of mine, Flavia Jimenez, who was co-leading actually the retreat with another, just wonderful yoga instructor, Jess Sandhu. And the two of them, dreamt up this idea. They were actually originally supposed to facilitate this retreat last year, and that wasn't in the cards for me, and so I passed on it. And then there were some social political issues going on in the country, and they postponed it to this year. And so then it was back in front of me as an opportunity, and like, oh, okay. I said no once, but now I was feeling drawn to the idea of leaving, of being in community with, it was mostly women of color on this retreat, but not entirely, about 14 of us, including the facilitators. And I was like, it's the kids' spring break. So I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
that's really not good timing.
Mm.
The dates of the retreat overlapped with my daughter's ninth birthday,
Wow.
right? Business was like a little bit slower than it had been. So I had that on my mind as well. Like, I can't do this. It's expensive. Like the list was
Yep.
really long. Like,
Hmm.
and, but I was feeling drawn. Like I wasn't letting it go. Like it kept
Yeah.
sort of reappearing as a desire. I'm fortunate to have a really caring partner who listened to me, and he would bring it back up like, maybe you should do this. Like, what's stopping you from doing this? And I was like, oh, it's not possible. There's
Hmm.
just too much going on. It's too expensive. It's too far. It's too long. It's too everything. And right, like as we approached the end of the year, it was like late December. I was like, I really want to do this. And he
Hmm.
was like, you should. And I also called my best friend who lives in San Antonio, Texas. And I was like, do you want to do this with me? And she was like, what? Like, that's a long time to be away, Shilpa. Are you sure? And she has 4 kids. So like really is a physician, a mother also. Um, and we both were just like, it was one of those like, F it, let's do it moments. And we just did, I told her I signed up, and then
Yeah.
she's like, well, if you did it, well, I'm going to sign up too. And
Yeah.
it was really liberating to be away for that long. I won't say we were completely cut off. We did, each of us talked to our kids a couple times, during the trip.
Yeah.
But there was something about not having to plan our meals or plan the schedule or really be responsible for much of anything during
Yeah.
that time, that we could just be
Yeah.
and be in a extraordinarily beautiful place, spiritually very deep place, in community with other people that share values. It was so worth it. It was so worth the time and all the reasons, that we thought it was going to be impossible.
Yeah. I think that's such an amazing story to share because it's so easy as a mom to be like other people first. I can't,
Mhm.
there's so many reasons I can't do this. But if it keeps coming back to you, like F it, let's do it, right? Like trust
Yeah.
that whoever, whatever support network you've got around you can handle can handle that. And different people will be in different situations with that. Will take X amount of work to kind of arrange that beforehand. But every woman I've ever talked to who has managed to get away for even if it's, for some people different stages, it might be 1 day, 2 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like how did it feel afterwards?
And I do want to acknowledge, I mean, there is a lot of privilege in being able to make a choice
Yeah.
like this, and a
Yeah.
lot of support that I had to make it possible.
Yeah.
I think that this is the challenge that I'm in at this moment, honestly, is the integration.
Yeah.
Having had a really impactful experience like that, and then returning to the routine of daily life and, working and mothering and all the things,
Yeah.
it I'm still working through how to take, probably in smaller pieces, things that I experienced while away and bring them into my day-to-day life,
Yeah.
right? Because the contrast is so huge. Like you're just totally free and, without responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. And then come back to like, oh, everything is still here, that, you need to
Yeah.
take care of. I take that seriously. I think that the challenge is it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? Like this is not the
Yeah.
only way that you can learn and grow, is by like leaving all your cares behind for X
Hmm.
number of days. But it's like, what did I learn from that I want to now build into my life moving
Yeah.
forward?
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay, I don't even want to say these words because I think I could talk to you for another like 3 hours, honestly.
Likewise.
So maybe another time. But we do have to start winding it down. So I'm gonna ask you, out of all of this and, all of the knowledge and experience you have in life, knowing that we have mothers and those who mother listening into this who have big audacious dreams or they really want to just get out there and make a difference outside their house in some sort of way.
Yeah.
Um, what would you say to them? Like, what tip would you give to the listeners?
Yeah, I think that those limiting beliefs and all of that narratives we were talking about, it's always with us, right? To some degree. But if we can hold that and also hold that as human beings, ultimately, our deepest desire is to be free. We all want to be free, no matter who we are, where we are, what our identity groups we belong to, right? We want to be free. In fact, the name of my practice is mukti. Mukti in Sanskrit means liberation, right? So we want to be free, and we can hold the complexity of all of that, right? Of the responsibilities that we have, the the traumas that we have from this lifetime or from previous generations, the opportunities that are in front of us, as well as that really deep desire to be free. And I think what I would want to share with your listeners more than anything else is to not forget that we want to be free, that we have a right to be free, that we can pursue that liberation and freedom together. Because when we stop believing in that and stop believing in our own choice and agency, that's when I think we really feel defeated, right? And we start giving up on ourselves, on each other, and can go to that hopeless place. We've got to somehow find that desire within us. And I'm not saying that's enough. I mean, it's a journey. You and I were talking about like this journey and all the difficult steps along the way and the things that we need to move through to make it possible. But I really do believe we can hold the complexity of it all. We don't have to engage in sort of this binary, either it's this or it's that. Either I am a mom or I'm a professional, or I've burnt myself out trying to do all the things. You know what I mean? We can hold on to the complexity, we can move through it, and we can move closer to that liberation that we want.
Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you. Okay, so if people are listening in and they're like, I want to hear more, I want to talk to this lady, I want to, how do they find you?
Sure. Well, the name of my practice, my coaching and consulting and facilitation practice is Mukti Consulting. So Mukti is Mookti. As I mentioned, means liberation. So mukticonsulting.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find me, Shilpa Alimchandani, on LinkedIn. And yeah, I would love to connect.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today. And let's do it again. That's where I'm going to go with this.
That sounds
Yeah.
great. Thanks, Mel.
All right. It is so hard for me to believe because time has just flown by, but we are coming up to our 1 year anniversary of Permission to Be Human, the podcast. How? Just how? And I'm so excited that I have tons of stuff in the works. Like, tons. So Sunday, May the 12th to Saturday, May the 18th, there is going to be things happening every single day that week. There'll be a podcast episode coming out at 7 a.m. each day, including quite a few different things, but you'll get a chance to hear an interview with me. I gave the hosting thing over to my good friend Sarah, and she interviewed me. So you'll find out more about me. You'll find out more about my family. And more importantly, this is a week about overwhelm, right? Tools to get out of overwhelm is what that week is going to be all about. So we'll have episodes by an 8-year-old girl who teaches kids yoga. Amazing. We'll have episodes by an EFT tapping specialist. We'll have episodes with just me, chattering away as I always do. And as well as an episode coming out every single day that week at 10 a.m. on Facebook Live and Instagram Live, I will be showing you a tool that will help you get through overwhelm. So don't miss that. There are also going to be prizes, and more prizes. I'm super excited. I am gathering them together and figuring out what they're going to be. But do show up that week. Listen live on Facebook, listen to the podcast episodes, and you will find out how you can be in for some pretty epic prizes. And I have one request for you right now. One of those days is going to be a Q&A, Ask Mel Anything day. And in order for me to run something like that, I need some questions. What have you been wondering when you've been listening to this podcast? What questions do you have? You can ask me anything. I'm pretty much an open book. It could be about me, or it could be about you. It could be about your well-being. Ask me anything. Curiosities. And I promise I will answer them that week. Even if I get like 1,000. We'll figure it out. So please do send me permissiontobehumanalways@gmail.com your questions so that I can answer them. I'm so excited that we're 1 year in, and I can't wait to celebrate with you. That is it, folks. This has been Mel Finlater on Permission to Be Human, the podcast, and I am so glad that you have joined us here today and hope that you have taken away some tidbits that will help you go away, connect with your big, audacious dream, and make that massive impact in the world that you are dying to make. If you liked today's episode, please like it, share it. Think of one person that you think would also like it and send it on over to them. Let's get this out there and more moms feeling like themselves, inspired, dreaming big, and out there being them. Please do head on over to find me on Facebook with Permission to Be Human, or Instagram, or you can even pop me an email and say hello at permissiontobehumanalways@gmail.com. Say hello and let me know that you listened. What did you like about it? I would love to hear. If you didn't like it, I don't really want to know. Just kidding. You can share that if you want. I would love to know, however, who you are. Let's connect. Let's find out what you want more of. Yes, this is a newer podcast, so I want to hear from you and I want to make it what would be useful to you. As always, remember that you have permission to dream big, permission to feel big, and permission to be you. You have complete and full permission to be human. For real, you do.